questions that I get asked the most is, what software should I be using for blah, 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 blah. People ask me all the time, what should I be using for this? What do you use? What would you recommend? I do a lot of software tutorials on this channel. And what I have found is that it depends on the person. So I've come up with a framework that allows me to help my clients and people that follow me on this channel to choose the right software that best fits them. And it's called the 3T test. The 3 T's are time. How much time does it take for you to set up and to use? Number 2 is tech comfort. How comfortable are you setting it up and using it? And then 3rd, total value. Is it worth the money for what you're actually using it for? So a lot of people, I think, waste a lot of money, time, and energy on specific softwares only to realize that they don't need all the features, or they need something more intensive, so then they have to switch platforms. And platform hopping is the most annoying thing in the world. It's why some people stay on the same platforms for years, because they don't want the hassle, but it's actually negatively affecting them in their business. So today I'm going to be walking you through some of the different softwares that I use, like the different categories, what some of the main options are, and why I chose the options that I did based off of that 3T test. Now for me, I am a techie. I love technology. I love all that. So I sometimes need more robust systems. However, a lot of my clients have a little bit more simple businesses, so I don't always recommend the same tools for myself that I do for my clients. So we're gonna kind of get into it in some of the different categories. You'll see down below that I have my chapter list, so make sure to just follow along and cut to wherever you need to learn about that software. So we'll start with the first option, which is kind of something that a lot of people have been wondering about lately, and that is an all-in-one versus best-in-class. So basically what I used to do back in 5-6 years ago was I had a ton of different softwares, and now I'm just using an all-in-one tool. So there have been some awesome tools that have come out in the last couple of years. Go High Level, Kajabi, ThriveCart has a ton of stuff, but basically idea is that you can have an all-in-one tool that has everything that you need, or you individually use different tools and then you link them together. Now, this really depends on a lot of things. Number 1, budget. Number 2, go through the 3 T's. Budget. Do you have time to learn how to use an all-in-one? An all-in-one usually means that you have to learn a lot more software because there's so much to it and it's all interlinked, and there's a lot of automations, specifically FG Funnels, which I use, which is so a lot of people are like, Jenna, what email software do you use? What marketing software? How do you create your website? I use FG Funnels. I most recently switched my email over to Substack, but everything else I use FG Funnels for my funnels, my website, CRM, that sort of stuff. Booking, scheduling, all that goes into FG Funnels. However, I used to be the person that used Flodesk with Squarespace, with all these different other tools, and so I didn't have an all-in-one. I used probably Teachable for courses. I use all these different things, and now I've kind of switched to an all-in-one platform. However, it is way more expensive than a lot of these one-off tools. So for me, I'm not even sure if I'm going to stay on FG Funnels forever, because I'm realizing I have less and less needs over the years, because I've moved now to Substack for my email, and there's other things where I'm actually kind of splitting again. But for some people that have a really, really intense business, an all-in-one is a great tool, and I do recommend FG Funnels if you're looking for one of those. I chose that over Kajabi because of the price, and it just has way more functionality for me. Go through the 3T test and figure out, is it worth your time, is it worth your money, and is it worth figuring out how to set it up for yourself. The next section is one that I've done so many videos on, and that is my digital organization and planning. Now, a lot of people know I teach Notion. It is my absolute favorite tool for everything, but I will say not everyone probably is great at Notion or wants to use Notion. And there's been some pushback on Notion because it is complicated to learn. Some people want something simple like Trello or Asana or ClickUp. That's totally fine. I love it because it is personalized. It is something that I can set up. It's a choose your own adventure. And I love spending time in Notion. Some people think it's a waste of time. Literally, so many people have opinions about Notion. I love it. Is it for you? It depends on the 3 T's, right? It's free, which most of these kind of softwares are, so that one's kind of not as big of a thing. Tech comfort, that's probably the biggest one for Notion is, are you willing to spend time learning how to use it? That's probably the biggest thing. I love Notion because once you master it, you can do so many things with it, and that's why I love it so much. But sometimes people just aren't willing to learn how to do it, and they just don't want to spend the time. that's totally fine. And then finally, the time. That's kind of what I was just talking about. Like, do you want to spend time learning how to use Notion? Do you rather just have something that's a grab and go, you start using it immediately? It really depends. You know, there's a ton of options, and I'm gonna probably put all of this below in the show notes, but also on my Substack. So if you haven't followed my Substack, I send out weekly emails. Also, I'm gonna be putting together a tech stack Notion page. So if you want to check out all the tools that I use and recommend, you can check that out below as well. Some other things that you have to kind of pick between when you're starting a business is like storage, file storage, iCloud, that sort of thing. I use a combo of Google Drive, Google Photos, and iCloud. I use them for different things, but you can also have OneDrive and Dropbox. It really, again, depends. I'm more of a Google user, so I tend to use stuff like Google Drive, which is included in my Google account, which is why I use that over Dropbox. Other people have, been grandfathered into their businesses using Dropbox. Tons of different options there. For me, I chose Google Photos, and you've seen me I've done a ton of videos on Google Photos. Google Photos is my favorite. I've tried Apple Photos. I still use it because that's the thing I have on my iPhone, but I eventually move everything out and move it onto Google Photos. I just think it has way better AI tools, and honestly, I think that the updates to Apple Photos has actually made it worse. So I'm a much, much, much bigger fan of Google Photos, and that's why I've switched to that. But again, for me, I'm a power Google Photos user. I use all the different features. I use the Google Lens. I use the search with the search terms. You can search words. It's just easier to use as a separate app, and then you can remove all the photos from your phone. There's just so many reasons I use Google Photos over Apple Photos on literally every day. In addition to this, I wasn't gonna mention this, but also AI tools. There's a ton of new AI tools coming around. Obviously ChatGPT is one. I pay for ChatGPT, but there's also Claude and Gemini and Perplexity. There's all of these tools that you might wanna just play around with. Thankfully, most AI tools don't have any of the 3 T's in terms of usually they're low cost, usually they're pretty quick to figure out, and not that long to take to learn. So I honestly think those ones are pretty slick to just kind of start and see if you like it or not, and you learn from there. All right, so then the next section is websites and landing pages. Now, I went through a sales funnel training in 2021, so I learned a lot about sales funnels, and that's why, again, I switched over to an all-in-one system so I could have more sales funnels. But most people don't need that many sales funnels. They just need a basic website, they need a way to get people's emails, a way to sell a product, and a contact page. That's basically all you need for a website these days, especially because of AI and the changes. Social media to me is more important than websites these days. You still want your website to convert and be able to be found on Google, but to the most part, it doesn't have to be as fancy as it used to be. So there's a ton of options these days. I'm a big fan of Squarespace because Squarespace is really, really simple. It's pretty cost effective. WordPress is great if you want more of a robust and really big website, but I find for most small business owners when they're first starting, Squarespace is a great place to start. And then if you want to eventually move to WordPress, you can. But WordPress is a really big undertaking if you're brand new to building websites. There's a lot of UI issues that I don't love. I've worked with both Squarespace and WordPress with clients, and I much personally prefer Squarespace. There's also things like Showit, Webflow, lots of other options as well for websites. It just really, again, think about the 3 T's. If you want something that's easy and cheap, you could go with GoDaddy, right? That's what some of the people I know are using. WordPress is free, all you have to pay for is hosting. But you are gonna have to pay something. And a lot of people are like, I want a free website. I'm like, you can use Substack. That's a free one that I know of. Other than that, you're probably gonna have to pay something. Especially if you wanna grow a business, you're gonna have to start paying for some of this stuff. I personally use also ThriveCart as a way to do some of my funnels, and specifically for my courses. And that's something that I have used for a couple years now, and I really like ThriveCart. I'll kind of talk about that as we get more into course setups. Okay, this is a big one, and this is email marketing. There is a ton of different options for email marketing. There's ConvertKit, which is now Kit, MailerLite, MailChimp, Flodesk. I use Substack. All the major CRM tools and all-in-ones also have email. There's things like ActiveCampaign. There's so many, you guys. It just really depends. And for me, what I would do also is just put them into ChatGPT and say which of these would be best for me based off of my skill level. Obviously, things like MailerLite, MailChimp, I think even ConvertKit has free options. So if you are really, really I need something free, that's great. That's why I like Substack, because again, it's free, but You also get like a blog as part of it. You can also upload your podcast. I'm just such a pro Substack at this point. Please like hire me because I'm like, I want to be your brand ambassador. There's things like Flodesk is great for aesthetics, and it has like unlimited number of people based off their basic account, but there's not as much automation like, for example, ActiveCampaign or ConvertKit would have. So it really depends on what you need. Again, use the 3 T's. Really figure out, okay, how much time do I want to spend in email? How many subscribers do you have? How much do you want to grow? There's other things like Beehive as well, which are more, again, like community based. And I just personally am, again, a fan of Substack. So if you haven't joined Substack, that's what I recommend. Then there's things like Canva, or maybe if you wanted to use like Adobe Rush or some of these softwares. I find for myself, I've actually moved away from all of the Microsoft products. So I don't use PowerPoint, I don't use Word, I don't use Excel, I use Sheets, I use Docs, Google Docs, both of those are Google. And then for presentations, I use Gamma, which is like an AI PowerPoint software. So I don't have to pay for Microsoft. I also don't use Apple's versions. I just use 2 of Google's and then Gamma for any of that stuff. So if you're paying for Microsoft products at this point, I'm like, you can get them all for free on other platforms. So I just don't choose to pay for those. When it comes to actual social media stuff, I do pay for a few different things. I pay for Canva Pro, I pay for Zoom Pro, I pay for CapCut Pro, and I don't pay for my social scheduler, which is Metricool. I also don't pay for OBS, which is how I record screen shares of things for my Notion videos. I did pay for Final Cut, but I don't actually use that anymore because I switched to CapCut. So I use a lot of those for making videos. All the videos you see here are filmed using on my DSLR, and then I use CapCut to edit. I use Canva to make my thumbnails. So I really don't use that many tools to make YouTube videos these days. Finally, the last category that I thought would be relevant is courses and digital products. So as I mentioned before, and I've gotten some emails about this, like, do I use ThriveCart? Do I use FG Funnels? What do I use? I've switched all my courses to ThriveCart. You can host courses in FG Funnels. However, have chosen ThriveCart because I know that FG Funnels is one of those platforms where I might not be on it forever. It's expensive. I pay for it monthly. But ThriveCart was a one-time purchase that has already paid itself off. So I would rather put all of my courses onto a platform I've already paid off and know that they will stay there forever than have something where I may eventually move off of FG. Maybe there's another option that comes around. I try to be loyal to softwares, but like I was using Dubsado for years as kind of my CRM for my business. I love Dubsado, but they didn't have as much funnel stuff that I needed. They didn't have as much course stuff as I needed. They were just a straight up CRM contract booking thing for more service-based businesses. And I got over, like I literally hit the limit of what I could do on Dubsado. I loved it. It was a great community. So that's why I switched to FG Funnels. And I think I used another software in between. I don't remember which one it was, but Kartra. I used Kartra for like 2 years, and I didn't really like Kartra very much. I liked FG Funnels so much more. So I've been on FG Funnels now 4 years. So it's definitely something that I have stuck with. Again, not cheap, but for me and what I use it for, it was worth it. I'm at this point where I'm scaling back a little bit of what I offer. So I'm, again, like reevaluating my software options. I do have a ton of funnels set up on there though. So it would take a lot for me to have to move, but you know, I'm always open to doing that if it's not feeding me anymore. So I'm gonna list off below, again, in my free guide, what I actually pay for in my business when it comes to software, as well as some of the free ones that I love. I have a ton of free softwares that I have found. Again, I like not paying for things I don't want to pay for, right? There's things I have to pay for. Like I didn't used to pay for CapCut Pro, but now unfortunately in order for me to get captions, I have to pay for it. I never paid for ChatGPT Pro until I realized I used it enough that I needed the Pro version. You know, so there's certain things where you hit a point where you go, the free version just isn't cutting it anymore. I have to upgrade. So that's something that I feel like for a lot of people is you have to hit that point of when do you upgrade to the Pro version from the free? That is something you have to kind of figure out for yourself. Are you a power user of something? So if you want to check that out, my full list below, you can. If you have any software questions about anything that I use, if you want more tutorials on specific softwares, I get questions about software all the time because I've done so many software videos at this point. That's kind of what I teach with my one-on-one clients. If you need any help with any of these, I do 90-minute calls with people. So it's called a clarity call, and I can walk you through any software that I use or that I know really well, or even one that you use that I probably would be able to figure out very quickly, like a website or email software. If you're stuck at all, just literally book a free call so that you can learn more, and then you can book a 90-minute call so that we can do it together. Make sure when you are choosing your software, making sure that you go through the 3T framework, because you don't want to be software hopping, right? You don't want to spend 2 months setting up a software only to realize it's not the right fit for you and you should have gone with something else. And then you're stuck with it for 5 years because you don't want to change, right? You have to make sure that it makes sense for you. I spend a lot of my free time figuring out what softwares work for me, and then I keep them until they don't work for me anymore. And so a lot of the software I use, I've been using now for 4 or 5 years. Like, I really have stuck with the stuff that I've gotten to, but there's people that I talk to every single week where they're just like, oh, I hate this software, I want to switch. So don't find yourself in that situation. If you have any questions, again, always email me and I'll talk to you later. Bye.